I once sat down with a man in his early 40s, someone who had been doing the same job for almost 20 years. He told me, I want to change, but I'm afraid of failing. So I asked him, are you really afraid of failure, or are you afraid of seeing yourself as ordinary, not as special as you thought you were? He went quiet for a moment, then gave me a sad smile. We often say we're afraid of failure, but most of the time, what we truly fear is feeling ordinary. We're afraid of giving our all and realizing we're no different from the people we once looked down on. Afraid that, after all, we're just one more person among millions trying to make it through life. But you know what? That fear, it's nothing more than an illusion created by a tired mind. Imagine losing your job, or seeing your business fail. What's the worst that could happen? You won't starve. You won't be left alone in the cold like people were a century ago. Modern society gives you countless ways to get back up again. Failure today is no longer a death sentence. It's a free lesson, sometimes more valuable than a university degree. I once read a study from the University of Toronto that found the human brain reacts to fear like it does to a false memory. It creates the worst possible scenario and convinces us it's real. But 95% of what we fear never actually happens. That's why so many people drown in their worries, not in their real failures. Let me ask you to imagine this. If you failed tomorrow, if everything fell apart, could you still eat, sleep, breathe, and start over again? The answer, almost always, is yes. So that fear isn't real. It's just a wall in your mind, one you built yourself to avoid pain or embarrassment. A philosophy mentor I once studied with in Montreal said something beautiful. Fear doesn't come from the future, it comes from memory. We're not afraid because we know pain is coming. We're afraid because we've felt it before. And maybe that's why we need to relearn how to see failure. Failure isn't the end, it's a mirror that shows us where we stand on our path of growth. If you could change just one thing today, start by stopping your fear. Because in truth, you have nothing to lose, except the chance to become the person you were always meant to be. Tell me, have you ever felt that way? That sometimes, what holds you back isn't the world out there, but that small voice inside your head whispering. What if you fail? And in that very moment, you have to answer it, clearly and calmly. Then I'll learn. And I'll keep going. I want you to pause for a moment and really think about this. How many times in your life have you wanted to start over, to learn a new skill, change jobs, open a small cafe, or simply live more truthfully, but then you stop yourself because you were afraid of not being good enough? I've seen this in so many people. From immigrants in Toronto struggling to build a new life, to business owners who failed once and never dared to try again. They carry a fear deeper than failure itself, the fear of losing their own identity. So they choose to stay where it feels safe. In that comfort zone, there are no risks, but there's also no growth. A colleague once told me, I hate my job, but I can't quit. I have bills to pay, kids to raise, and I'm scared that if I try something new, I'll ruin everything. I understood. We've all thought like that before. But then I asked him, if you keep living like this for another 10 years, are you sure you're not already ruining something? He looked away, lost in thought, and didn't answer. You see, the scariest thing in life isn't failure, it's stagnation. It's waking up every morning doing something you don't love, and convincing yourself that this is good enough. But enough is the most dangerous trap of all. When you believe you're enough, you stop growing. And when you stop growing, your soul starts to fade, quietly, slowly, behind routines and the illusion of safety. I once told one of my students, if you're still afraid, it means you're still alive. But if you stop moving because of that fear, you've already started dying inside it. Every step forward in human history began with someone who dared to walk through the illusion of fear, scientists, artists, parents who decided to change their lives for their children. None of them knew for sure they would succeed. They only knew one thing, stopping because of fear is the only guaranteed failure. And the same goes for you. Whether you're 25 or 55, it's never too late to begin again. Because fear only exists until you walk through it. Once you do, you'll realize, it was never really there at all. Underscore 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 underscore. I remember once, during a talk in Vancouver, a middle-aged woman raised her hand and asked me, how do I know if I should keep going or if it's time to give up? I've tried so many times, and I'm just tired. I looked into her eyes and saw a lifetime of sacrifice, a heart full of pain, but still carrying a little light. I told her, you're not tired because you've been trying. You're tired because you believe you have to succeed right away. You see, we often confuse effort with results, and then feel disappointed when they don't match. But in reality, on the path of growth, no effort is ever wasted. Every small step, every moment you choose to keep moving when others give up, it all adds up, quietly shaping the person you're becoming. Failure isn't the end. It's a process of refinement, a place where you learn patience, where you learn to stand firm when life doesn't go your way. A study from the University of British Columbia found that people who experience early failure in their careers are 30 to 40% more likely to succeed later on. Not because they're more talented, but because they've built what I call mental muscles, the strength to endure the next failure. It's like lifting weights. You don't lift to make the weights lighter, you lift to make yourself stronger. Think about this for a moment. Do you remember when you were young, doing something bold, even reckless, just because you believed, why not? Let's just do it. But as we grow older, that courage fades, replaced by hundreds of reasonable excuses. Ironically, it's often reason itself that kills the dreams of adults. A psychologist I once met in Quebec told me something I'll never forget. People don't lose the ability to dream, they just get better at making excuses. So if you're listening to me right now, I want you to know this. No matter where you are, no matter your age, no matter how many times you've stumbled, it's never too late to start again. It's never too late to start again. Because you don't need to start from scratch. You just need to stand up, with the experience you've earned and a new heart to guide you. Life won't wait for you to stop being afraid. But it will reward you the very moment you dare to act, even if it's just one small, trembling step. And maybe, that's the true definition of courage. One time, I was sitting in a small cafe in Toronto when an older man began telling me his story. He said he used to be an engineer at a large corporation. But when he turned 50, he was laid off. He looked down at his coffee and said quietly, "At that moment, I felt like my whole world collapsed. I didn't know who I was anymore." I asked him, "So what did you do next?" He smiled gently and pointed out the window, to a small white truck parked outside with a sign that read, "Handyman, fixing homes, fixing lives." He said, "I started fixing things for my neighbors. Then for strangers. Eventually, I opened a small business. Now, I work with my own hands. I earn less, but I've never felt freer." That story stayed with me for a long time. Because failure, when we look at it the right way, always carries an invitation to live more truthfully. It doesn't come to destroy us, it comes to bring us back to our core values, to remind us that life isn't defined by titles, status, or the numbers in our bank account, but by the meaning we create for others. I once read a study from the University of Alberta that found people in midlife who experience career loss but choose to return to work that aligns with their passions report 60% higher levels of happiness and emotional stability than those who choose the safe path. It shows that when you dare to start again with something that makes you feel alive, life itself begins again with you. I know that at 40 or 50, starting over can sound like a nightmare. But the truth is, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience, from the scars you've earned, from the patience and wisdom that only time can teach. And that's worth far more than the so-called youth of your 20s. Remember this, you are never too old to dream, and it is never too late to change. The world keeps opening up every single day for those who still dare, to try, to learn, and to believe that their story isn't over. Maybe you can't run as fast as you used to, but you can go farther, because now, every step you take carries meaning. And perhaps, that's something you've never truly understood. I once read a quote somewhere that has stayed with me ever since: "Youth is the privilege of the body, but perseverance is the privilege of a mature soul." The older I get, the more I understand how true that is. When you move past your 30s and 40s, life is no longer about short bursts of excitement, it becomes a long journey of patience, of learning how to stand firm when the storms come. And the beautiful thing is, that quiet consistency, slow and steady, often carries more power than the spark of early enthusiasm. I once had a student named Martin, 42 years old. He had been working in sales for nearly 2 decades before realizing he had never truly lived for himself. He told me, "I don't feel any passion for my job anymore, but I don't know where to start." I said to him, "Don't wait for inspiration. Start small, write down what makes you curious, what you'd like to learn again, no matter how simple it seems." A year later, Martin came back to see me. He brought a notebook filled with messy scribbles, silly ideas mixed with heartfelt thoughts. He said, "I'm still scared, but I've started writing. Now, I'm about to publish my first book." I remember shaking his hand firmly, because he was living proof of something I've always believed: perseverance beats both fear and time. Science has a name for this: neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape and learn at any age. It means you can start learning to play an instrument, paint, start a business, or even fall in love with life again, even after 50. Your brain doesn't grow old, it simply stops growing when you stop giving it reasons to. So don't believe that tired phrase, "It's too late." No one is ever truly too late, only those who give themselves permission to stop. You can begin again, your career, your passion, your love, as long as you're still breathing, still curious, still feel your heartbeat a little faster when you think about something new. Life doesn't demand that you move fast. It only asks that you keep moving. And every small step, repeated long enough, eventually becomes a brand new path. I want you to think back to a moment in your life, a time when you stood at a crossroads, filled with hesitation. Maybe it was when you were about to quit a job that no longer brought you joy, or when you wanted to tell someone you'd quietly loved them for a long time. Do you remember how that felt? Your heart was racing, your hands were trembling, and your mind was full of voices whispering, "What if it goes wrong? What if they say no?" All those voices come from the same place, the fear of regret. It's strange, isn't it? Humans often fear failure, yet what truly haunts us are the chances we never took. I've met many successful, wealthy people, and when you speak with them deeply, they don't regret their losses, they regret the moments they didn't dare to try. One entrepreneur in Ottawa once told me, "I lost millions of dollars, but what keeps me up at night is the project I never started." There's an interesting psychological truth behind that. Our brains tend to exaggerate short-term fear and underestimate long-term pain. We fear the sting of disappointment today more than the ache of regret 10 years from now. But the truth is, regret lasts much longer. It hides inside every quiet "what if" we whisper when we look back on our lives. I remember a woman who once came to one of my workshops in Calgary. She was in her 60s, her hair mostly gray, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I always wanted to open a bakery, but my husband didn't believe in the idea. He's gone now, and I wish I had tried. Just once." In that moment, I didn't know what to say except for something simple. "But you still can. You can start right now." She smiled through her tears and said softly, "Maybe this time. I will." Regret is an invisible weight, but it can also become a powerful fuel, if you choose to act. Let the what-ifs of yesterday become the "I'm glad I did's" of tomorrow. Because there's nothing more painful than living an entire life without ever knowing who you might have become, if only, back then, you had dared to try just once. Underscore 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 underscore. I once had a conversation with an Asian man in Vancouver, in his mid-30s, who worked in finance. He told me that every morning when he woke up, he felt a heavy weight on his chest, not because his job was too hard, but because the numbers he dealt with every day no longer meant anything to him. He said, "I'm tired, but I'm too afraid to change. I have a house, a wife, kids, and I'm scared that if I try something different, everything will fall apart." I stayed silent for a moment and then asked him, "But if you keep living like this, are you sure everything won't fall apart anyway?" He gave a faint, uneasy smile. That question didn't need an answer, because deep down, we both knew, stagnation is also a kind of collapse. It just happens slowly, quietly, over time. In life, we all face difficult choices. No path is easy, even the so-called safe path comes with the cost of losing a piece of yourself. That's why I always tell my students, both success and failure are hard. So choose the kind of hard that has meaning. Living with purpose, even when it's exhausting, is still better than living without direction. Failing on the path you choose is still worth more than succeeding in a life you don't love. You will face pressure, worry, and fatigue, but when you know you're heading in the right direction, all of that becomes fuel, not a burden. I've seen many people who thought they'd lost everything, only to find something deeper, peace. A father who lost his job but finally had time to play with his children. A woman who quit her office job and discovered her love for painting. When they accepted the challenge of walking into discomfort, life began to open new doors for them, doors where happiness was no longer about comfort, but about feeling truly alive. So don't be afraid when your chosen path gets rough. If you're tired, confused, or fighting your way through, it's a sign that you're really living. Because Northwest easy road ever leads to growth. Only the honest one does, the one where every painful step brings you closer to the person you were always meant to become. I still remember a winter evening in Montreal. After finishing a talk with a small group of students, a young woman came up to me and asked, "Sir, I've read so many books about personal growth. I take notes, I understand everything you say, but nothing in my life changes. Why?" I smiled and said, "Because knowledge is only a map. The path, you have to walk it yourself." She went silent. And in that moment, I realized, her story is the story of so many of us. We read, we listen, we nod, we agree, but then we don't act. We live in an age overflowing with advice and philosophy, yet missing the simplest thing of all, the first step. A neuroscientist from the University of Toronto once said, "The brain only believes what the body actually experiences." That means you can read dozens of books about courage, but if you've never faced your fears, your brain still believes you're a coward. You can understand the theory of freedom, but if you've never dared to say no to what hurts you, you're still living inside your own cage. I once met a man in his 50s who told me, "I used to dream of being a photographer, but I thought I wasn't good enough. Now I have the money and the time, but I no longer have that spark in my eyes." I told him, "Then pick up your camera. Don't take another course, don't overthink it, just capture whatever feels beautiful to you." A year later, he sent me a photograph that had won a local photography contest. Underneath the picture, he wrote, "I started, late, but truly started." You see, knowledge doesn't change your life, action does. And action, no matter how small or imperfect, is always stronger than 1,000 promises. If you're waiting for the perfect time to begin, let me be honest with you, it will never come. There's no such thing as the right day to change. There's only the day you decide to move, and that day becomes the day your life starts to shift. I once heard a close friend of mine, a businessman in Toronto, say one night, "There were years when I worked without sleep, and projects that I thought were completely falling apart. But looking back, I realize I never truly lost. Every time I lost something, life quietly gave me a lesson that was worth even more." And he was right. The universe always has its own way of giving us what we truly deserve for the effort we've put in. Rewards don't always come right away, sometimes they arrive disguised as challenges, just to test whether we're truly ready to receive them. You might not believe this, but people who keep taking action, slowly, patiently, even through failure, rarely end up empty-handed. Because life, in its quiet fairness, doesn't pay salaries for dreams, but it always pays interest on effort. I remember a young man named Daniel, one of my former students in Vancouver. He studied design and graduated right in the middle of the pandemic. He couldn't find a job, so he decided to start his own online logo design service. In his first year, he made only a few $100s. But instead of quitting, Daniel spent the next 3 years learning more, taking on free projects, sharpening his skills. Then last year, he sent me a message, "Teacher, I just signed my first $100,000 contract. I can't believe I actually did it." I replied, "The universe just paid interest on your effort." I tell this story not to suggest that everyone will earn $100,000, but to remind you that every effort brings a return, just not always right away. When you plant a seed, you can't shout at it to make it grow faster. All you can do is care for it every day, patiently, faithfully, and consistently. Life works the same way. If you're trying and not yet seeing results, don't assume the universe is silent, it's watching to see if you're sincere. And when you keep going, even when no one's watching, even when no one's applauding, that's when the universe quietly starts writing your name on the reward meant for those who never gave up. I remember one autumn afternoon in Quebec, walking with an old friend of mine, a doctor, very successful, with a family, a beautiful house, everything society would call a complete life. But as we sat by the lake, he sighed and said, "I don't feel peaceful anymore. I have everything, yet I can't stand the voice inside my head." That sentence left me silent for a long time. Because I knew, the greatest enemy of a human being isn't adversity, it's the voice within. It whispers to you every night, "You're not good enough. It's too late. No one needs you anymore." And if you don't learn how to face it, or make peace with it, it will take over every belief, every dream, every bit of freedom you have. I've been through that myself. There were long winter days when I woke up with no motivation to write, no meaning in the work I was doing. I'd walk through the snow and ask myself, do I still believe in what I say? Then one day, I sat down, took a deep breath, and realized something. I didn't need to run from that voice anymore. I just needed to listen, without believing it. When you learn to endure yourself, you become stronger than any fear. Because no storm outside can break you, once you've learned how to stay calm within. I often tell my students, peace doesn't come when life becomes calm. It comes when you can sit in the middle of the storm and not lose yourself. You can't stop negative thoughts from appearing, but you can choose not to let them steer the wheel of your life. So learn to sit still, breathe, write down how you really feel, without judgment. Allow yourself to be weak, to tremble, to simply be human. Because the moment you accept yourself is the moment you reclaim the strength fear once stole from you. And one day, you'll come to see. Peace isn't a destination. It's a skill. And that skill only grows when you dare to stay with yourself long enough to realize, you were always enough, from the very beginning.